Welcome to UO Today. I'm Paul Pepis, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. My guest today is Portland-based film producer Neil Kopp. Kopp has collaborated with director Kelly Reichardt, producing her films Old Joy, Wendy and Lucy, Meek's Cutoff, and Night Moves. He recently completed Reichardt's Certain Women, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January of 2016. Kopp also produced Gus Van Sant's Paranoid Park and Jeremy Saulnier's, is that how you say it?
Saulnier.
Saulnier's Green Room, which premiered in the Director's Fortnight at the 2015 Cannes Film Festival and opens nationwide on April 29th. Thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I should say also that you're the first filmmaker to visit the UO as part of the inaugural Harlan J. Strauss Visiting Filmmaker Endowment in Cinema Studies.
That's what they told me.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
happy to be the first one.
So, how did you wind up becoming a film producer? What was your career trajectory like?
Yeah, I went to film school with the intention of writing and directing and being a filmmaker in that way. And one thing led to another. When I completed school, I needed a job, needed paying work, and that led me into production company work. And so I got a staff job at a production company, and I worked in that capacity, working for directors and producers in a production environment for about 5 years. And yeah, that just was sort of my boot camp of production. I mean, school taught me a lot, but working in a real professional environment, especially with commercials, which are, you know, in my case, about 25 or 30 jobs a year that we were kind of turning over as a company. I got to see a lot of things from start to finish, and that ended up setting me up for taking my first feature film project.
So, I'm sure you get asked this a lot. What exactly does a film producer do?
It's my least favorite question
Yeah, right,
because it's so hard to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still figuring out the answer to that question every movie that I do. But
Does it vary?
it does and it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we as producers find and recognize material, and then we legally option it or sort of obtain the material, sometimes with our director, into a legal entity so that we can raise money and create, you know, bring the script to the screen. So that is, in a nutshell, what we do. Material from the beginning through the process to the screen. But then in the actual context of making the film on set or in development and in prep, you know, we facilitate the director's vision, and we are their partner in the creation of the film.
So you can be doing, I don't know, locating locales to shoot or making arrangements with towns where you're going to do the shooting?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, though, we're more involved, I would say, at the finance level as it pertains to the cast and the script and the director. Like, those are the big pieces for a producer. Yeah, cast, script, director, and with that, we try to find the financing that we need. And there's always a little bit of wiggling around to make all those worlds align. Once those worlds are aligned, we get into the nuts and bolts of actually making it.
So most of the films that you've produced were produced in Oregon.
Yeah.
Why is that, and why has that been important for you?
You know, I'm from Oregon. I'm born and raised. And a lot of my production background was sort of learned here in Oregon, working for Oregon companies. So, you know, in a way, the material that I've gravitate towards is material that takes place in an environment that I understand and feel like I can bring something to it, either by having a distinct understanding of the space or the geography, something like that. But the other angle of it is that the Oregon Film Office and the state incentive programs really make the state and a exciting place to shoot for financial reasons, because they really, with the Oregon Investment Production Fund, make it really, a competitively positive place to shoot.
So you've just recently testified about Oregon Senate Bill 1507A.
Yes.
Which I assume is related to that.
It is,
so,
yeah.
So why is that a bill that you want to support? What is that bill going to do?
So that bill raises the limits, or the budget, the annual budget that the Oregon government puts into the incentive program. So right now there is way more shoots, television shows, movies, productions in general that want to shoot here than the ones that we can support. So every year we're turning away, or we had been turning away, television shows and films. And so this increase makes it that much more possible to, A, retain the work that we've already sort of made possible to be in the state. Shows like Grimm and Librarians, Portlandia. So to keep those, but to also attract new shows.
Why is it a good thing for the state of Oregon for films and television shows to be made here? Why is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing because the industry it's a green, clean industry. The wages in this line of work tend to be good. So they're, beyond just this idea of creating jobs, the industry is creating careers and sustaining careers. There's a lot of specialists in the film industry, and with more shows and more films, that can be a year-round career. Most of these jobs are also union, and so benefits are included in that, pension in some cases. And beyond that, it is an exciting industry, and it's something that, making movies and television shows it's interesting, and it's a good creative undertaking for. There's no one's getting hurt.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. I know that certain women, you guys had wanted to shoot that in Oregon, but it didn't get shot in Oregon.
Right.
So tell us that story.
Well, it didn't get shot in Oregon because there was no incentive funds. Incentive funds are something that increasingly over the past 10 years are more and more often required by studios, financiers. The soft money component is just important now. It's expected. And so if we want to make the case as producers to shoot in a state where there are no incentives, that's very tough, because we could go to Louisiana or Georgia or New Mexico and easily get 30% back of every dollar that we spend. And so it's just competitive out there, and it's hard enough to get things made as it is, and having that little extra kick is just sort of required. So Oregon was tapped out at the time.
So there's a budget per year, and if you use up that budget, that's program's
yeah,
over for the rest of the
year. The
year.
Oregon Film Office administers the spend. And because of all the other great, amazing shows that we're proud to have, in turn, there wasn't anything left for us. So we looked elsewhere, but we ended up in great hands in Montana.
So you've worked with director Kelly Reichardt, five films. How did that collaboration start? Did you know her previously?
I didn't. At the time, I was production managing and producing commercials, and an agency producer that I had worked with at Wieden & Kennedy had worked with Kelly's DP, Pete Sillen, and when Kelly and Pete were sort of conspiring to bring the film Old Joy to Oregon, they made some calls, and I got a call one day, just out of nowhere, and it was Kelly Reichardt. And she said, I'm a filmmaker, I have this script, and one thing led to another.
And she's not an Oregonian, right?
No, she's not. She lives in New York, and it was born in Florida, but has a lot of connections to the state through friends.
So what are the advantages of working with one director over a long period of time? I mean, you've worked with her on more films than any of the other. Why is that? What's kept you going back?
You know, Kelly and I are, we understand each other, you know. I mean, with anyone you work with a long time, you develop a shorthand, and you just kind of get into a groove. And I think that me and my producing partner, Anish, understand Kelly, how she works. I think that we all understand each other pretty good. And yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of what happened.
She's a great vision. She's just a fantastic director, and she's got such integrity. She's really kept her vision going for all the films. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, Green Room has
Yeah.
just opened.
Yeah.
This film is certainly a departure from these quiet dramas that she generally makes that you've been involved with. How did you get involved with this one?
My producing partner, Anish Savjani, produced Blue Ruin, which was Jeremy Saulnier's movie before Green Room. And Anish was one of the producers on that movie. And then when Green Room came around, we were just in the conversation from the beginning. And we talked to Jeremy at Sundance in 2 years ago. He told us about this idea, Green Room, this sort of band stuck in a green room, you know, at this sketchy venue. And he kind of talked us through what it was. And a couple months later, that script, exactly as he told us, was in our hands. And by September of 2014, we were shooting. And yeah, it just happened very fast. But yeah, it was because of Anish and Blue Ruin and that whole world.
One of the things I think is interesting with these films that you make, it's like, you know, I suppose if I was to sort of read a little bio of you, it'd say, you know, you're a producer of small indie films. But these films aren't that small. I mean, you get big actors in these films. In almost every one of these films, there have been major actors. And in this one, Patrick Stewart has this crazy role. Just tell us a moment about that. What is the character that Patrick Stewart plays? And how did you get him?
Yeah, Patrick Stewart plays the leader of a white supremacist movement, but he's also a club owner where our band gets a gig because they need the money. And so they end up there, and they witness some things, and drama and horror ensue.
Drama and horror ensue.
Yes.
And I mean, this is way out of line with the kind of roles that Patrick Stewart has played in the past. So how'd you guys get him?
Well, Jeremy's manager, Keith Redman at Anonymous, his assistant suggested Patrick Stewart because they manage him through some capacity, and it was just like a suggestion. You know, we had been kind of playing the casting game, and as soon as Patrick came up, we were just like, oh, of course.
Of course.
And you know, one thing led to another. I mean, we were lucky. He connected with the material.
Yeah.
He was available.
Yeah.
And we just did it.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
So that film is, I mean, you've been very careful not to give any spoilers, and I'll be careful not to give any spoilers, but boy, what an intense movie.
It is an intense movie. Yeah. No, that's what we said. You know, it doesn't maybe seem like a natural fit for us, but we, like anybody, any profession, any art, you know, you want to expand and try new things. And just as creative storytelling aside, as producers, Green Room presented huge challenges.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, there are lots, I think it's safe to say there are lots of special effects. There's special effects makeup. There's a stage build, you know, on a sound stage that we're pairing with, you know, locations in the real world. There are animals. There are stunts. On and on.
And these are not things that have been common in the previous films that you've done?
Not common. I mean, you know, there's always something difficult to figure out on every movie, but this movie happened to have everything at once to figure out. So we learned a lot. You know, we learned a lot while we did it.
Cool. So, are you able to tell us about any projects you're working on now or that you have in the pipeline, or is that top secret kind of information?
Yeah, I'm not really at liberty to discuss anything quite yet, but we are in production on our next feature right now.
And when will that should be a year from now, or something like that?
I think a year from now.
So your career is moving ahead. Things are going well.
One film at a time.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm ever that comfortable with where I am, or I don't feel like I'm set up by any means.
Is that a kind of a common thing among producers, or is it unique to producers that aren't working in Hollywood?
I think that anyone with an honest disposition knows that they're only as good as their last project, and nothing is certain for a myriad of reasons, and we just keep trying to do just do one thing at a time, do it as good as we can.
That sounds like a good life philosophy.
Yeah.
So you're in this special named the Harlan J. Strauss Visiting Filmmaker.
Yeah.
What are the kind of activities you're engaged with while you're in residence at the U of L?
So, first and foremost, I'm teaching a class called The Art of Producing in the Cinema Studies program. So, that's 4 classes that I'm leading, but it's part of a semester, I guess. So the students are watching all of my films in succession, and we're building exercises around the scripts and the schedules from those movies. And then I'm really, each class, I'm walking the students through my process of producing a film. Really there's some nuts and bolts to it, you know, as part of the lesson, but it's also just how to approach things in the world as a producer as we try to make these projects against a lot of odds.
So what kind of assignments? What are these assignments that they're doing? They're sort of mock?
No, I would say they're mostly based in the budgeting and scheduling realm.
I see.
But budgeting and scheduling, there's a lot of creative problem solving just inherent in those tasks that relate to real world conditions. And so we're trying to, walk through some scenarios, and we're talking about how to be a producer.
So you teach this class. Is there anything else that you do aside from that?
Yeah, we're doing some screenings of. We did a screening of Green Room a couple weeks ago, followed by a Q&A with the director, Jeremy Saulnier. And in May, we're going to do a screening of Certain Women, followed by a Q&A with Kelly Reichardt.
Cool.
And other than that, we're doing some one-on-one stuff with the students, some smaller group lunches and discussions.
You're not giving any public lectures, though? You're not a public lecturer?
No, not beyond the class of my 20 students.
So you've had this career in Hollywood. I'm sorry, in Portland, not in Hollywood.
Yeah.
How have you done that? Is it a much harder thing to be a film producer outside of Hollywood? I mean, is it harder to be a filmmaker outside of Hollywood, or has that changed? Is that not the case anymore?
I don't really think of myself as being outside of Hollywood or in Oregon or anything like that. I mean, we work on a national scale. We work with a lot of the same distributors and financiers, and we're not blazing trails here or inventing new ways to get movies made. I do live in Oregon, and we've shot a lot of the movies in Oregon, but the things that make these movies totally possible often come from outside of the state.
So the financing often comes from outside of the state.
Sure.
The talent often comes from outside of the state.
Exactly.
What advice would you offer to students who want to make a career in the film industry? What are your
I mean, just in the film industry in general?
Yeah, just in general. Or specifically, I mean, if you're talking to people who want to be producers, what do you tell them, or people that are just trying to start out?
I mean, I think if you want to be a producer, that you have to get on set and see how things are made, so that you can take those observations down the road and work them into your abilities to schedule and budget scripts that you want to make. I mean, I think that seeing it done a lot of different ways so that you can form your own opinion about what any particular project may need or not need. I think that seeing things done on a larger scale and done right, so that you can make educated decisions about how to scale things back to your whatever level you might be working at. I think that students need to read, become students of the world, read about things other than making movies, you know, read about history and the world, science.
Are you optimistic about the career? Do you think it's a good field for people to go into? It must be pretty competitive.
It is competitive, but it just depends how bad you want to do it. Everything's competitive, you know? Yeah.
Do you think that being a producer is what you're going to do, or do you think that down the road, I mean, I know there are people in the film industry that, you know, later on they become directors or they shift, writers, whatever. What do you think about that? Have you thought about that? I mean, you have this education that was more general. You've become a producer. You think you're going to stay a producer?
I do. Yeah. I think this is what I'm made to do.
You've discovered that this is your gift.
This is This, strangely enough, this is what I do now.
Yeah.
And I love it. You know.
It's a great story because most people that are thinking about the film industry, they're not thinking about being producers, right?
No, they're not. And neither was I.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened. But I feel like there's a lot of room to grow. I think there's can be a lot of longevity in producing. And I love it.
Are there particular skills or abilities that you think are crucial to be a producer? I mean, you must have some capacity with numbers.
Yeah, you have to be able to add and subtract. You know, I think that the skills you need are a baseline foundation understanding of how to execute a shoot. You know, you have to know the basics of a crew, and you just have to know the mechanics, basically, just how to put it together. And then I think you have to know what kind of material is good, or good enough for you to be able to dedicate the amount of time it takes.
When you say good in what sense?
Compelling. You know.
And so, if I'm an independent director, writer-director. I've got a script. I think it's good. I bring it to you. I need a producer. I can't make this movie if I don't have a producer. So I bring you this script and I say, I think this is a good script. So you're going to look at that script and you're going to decide whether you think it's good.
Right.
If you don't think it's good, what happens then? You say, we're not interested, and they got to shop it to somebody else.
Yeah, just be honest. I mean, we're not trying to sugarcoat anything, or, like, we're honest about our feedback. Sometimes we think things are bad. Sometimes they're just not for us. Maybe we feel like we can't get something made with whatever the elements are that are already in place. Maybe it's just too big for itself. I don't know. There's a lot of factors, but honesty is the best route.
And do you find that your taste or your capacities have evolved? I mean, are you at a point now where you're more comfortable doing bigger films, or do you think you have a niche that you're going to, films of a certain size and certain scope are the ones you're going to?
I think it just starts with connecting with the material for us. I mean, I would like to grow and do different stuff. So I'm not trying to stay in my niche exactly, but it's really project to project. It just has to click, and we have to feel like we can bring something to it and do it well.
So your producing partner, how did that partnership get going?
Yeah, we met on Old Joy, which was my first film. I produced the shoot, and then Anish was involved in the team that produced the post. And when it premiered in Sundance, we met, and we've done most of our films together since then.
So is it common for there to be two production teams, one for the post-production and one, or is that fairly common?
I mean, there's almost no common thing. You know, films are complicated, and the structure of how movies get made is dynamic and always different. So yeah, that just happened to be the case on that movie. And yeah, something good came out of it.
Are there particular aspects of production that you sort of take the lead on, and he takes the lead on some?
Yeah, there are things that we gravitate towards, but it would be hard to list them out. I would just say that we do most of everything together as much as we can, and sometimes we just have to divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer.
That's right.
Okay, that's a good one. It's a job, I take it, that is endlessly new. That is, you don't get bored in this work.
No, every day is different. I mean, there's always like the same kind of task at any given point in the chain of producing a movie, in prep or during the shoot, during post, whatever phase we're in. But the people the different directors, the different projects, the cast involved, it's always a different bag. So I don't try to get used to anything because it's always going to change.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your interesting work and all the variety of things that you do. And we're delighted to have you at the University of Oregon, and thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
I've been speaking with acclaimed film producer Neil Kopp. He's the first filmmaker to visit the U of O as part of the inaugural Harlan J. Strauss Visiting Filmmaker Endowment in Cinema Studies. Thanks again. Thanks for watching.